Have you ever known anyone that you were friends with or acquaintances with, only to watch them slide down the path of extremism? I have, but that should come as no surprise, considering I grew up in Saudi Arabia. I mean, let's be honest, if you weren't a psychopath jihadi in Saudi Arabia back then, you would be singled out as the strange one. But I must state that I am now starting to see indicators that things are slowly changing around me. I'm not sure I trust it just yet, but time will tell, and I will be sure to talk about this at a later date. Have you known someone in Canada or the US who has slid down the path towards extremism there? Devastating, isn't it? I mean, I personally cried for a couple of days because it hurt so much. But first, allow me to reference an episode by Tom Quiggin from the Quiggin Report podcast. The episode is number 65, and the name of it, the title, is Fostering Reciprocal Radicalization. You will find the link in the description. Please visit the description and click on the link and listen.
In Paris on the 13th of November 2015, a coordinated attack by Islamist extremists attacked a concert hall, a stadium, and some bars. 130 people died and hundreds were wounded. The list of attacks by Islamists goes on, and it's lengthy. I mean, it includes London on multiple occasions, Manchester, Ottawa, Edmonton, Brussels, Orlando, New York, Bali, Berlin, Madrid, Delhi, San Bernardino. This is a huge problem. As with the other issues, it's not too hard to go through the manifesto and find his names. They are clear. His aims are he wants to incite more violence, more racism, and more societal divides. In one line, he makes this very clear. Quote, to incite violence, retaliation, and further divide between the European peoples and the invaders currently occupying European soil, unquote. Just by way of explanation, he describes Australia and New Zealand as being European territory, in the sense that they were former European colonies and are largely occupied by descendants of white European populations. Although born in Australia, and he said he was going to do an attack in Australia, he decided to choose New Zealand after having lived there for a while. He chose the specific targets because of their earlier association with Islamist extremism. Additionally, he rationalized that if the problems and the responses can occur in New Zealand, then they can occur virtually anywhere in the Western world.
We all hear labels. We've been hearing a lot of labels being thrown around the past few years. People in the West are mainly pumping out these labels that have been initiated by jihadists and their leftist puppets. The labels that you have been hearing a lot of are terms like far-right, white nationalist, neo-Nazi, to a point where people who should not be using these labels have used them so much, so flippantly and lazily, that they have stripped these words of any meaning that they have had. And this goes high up as to the pseudo-intellects that are currently surrounding our Prime Minister Blackface and Jerry Butts. Jerry Butts, who calls anyone and everyone who dares to criticize his puppet, he calls them a Nazi. I don't know about you, but this is beyond disgusting. And why anyone in the media remains silent with regards to this lazy misuse of this term remains astounding to me.
Neo-Nazis, white supremacists, incels, nativists, and radical anti-globalists who resort to violent acts are a threat to the stability of my country and countries around the world. These attacks need to be at the top of our agenda when we talk about confronting terrorism. And when violence like this occurs in mosques, churches, synagogues, or on the streets of our major cities, we must not be afraid to specifically condemn it for what it is: neo-Nazism, white supremacism, Islamophobia, anti-Semitism, terrorism.
Some of my friends, like to tease me, and they they like to say that I'm a little woo-woo because I'm spiritual, I believe in positive energy, and I believe in emotional connections. And that's fine. It's actually good to have friends who tease you because they care enough about you to tease you about these things. But in fact, and having said this, there is something we can all agree on, and that there are trade-offs to everything in this universe. And one of the trade-offs is if you call people enough names, if you shame them publicly enough and ridicule them and mock them enough, well, guess what? Eventually, they're going to punch back. And just because they do punch back, it doesn't mean that they're going to punch back in the right direction. If you are living in the West right now, you are probably witnessing this going on. People who we thought were concerned and fairly reasonable people have seemed to have lost their minds with delusional conspiracy theories. And the worst part of this is they are not bad people deep inside, and I know this. But they have been so actively targeted that their frustration and their anger has not only reached a tipping point, but quite the boiling point. They see their government doing absolutely nothing to deal with quite the serious Islamist problem that we do have. Their laws now favor special interest groups that include Islamists, and no one seems to be doing anything about it. And if you say anything, you become a target as well. All the alienating of regular people who are concerned and simply want the Islamist problem dealt with is one of the additional reasons and causes for the phenomena that Tom describes in his podcast as reciprocal extremism or reciprocal radicalization. And I actually was recently a witness to this on a YouTube stream that I watched with people who I thought were fairly reasonable people, yet they decided to help elevate the platform of one of the worst anti-Semitic psychopaths that I've seen since living in Saudi Arabia. He bragged about how many interviews he gave to Press TV. Yeah, Press TV, by the way, is Iranian mullah propaganda. And this guy is one of their mouthpieces spewing Jewish conspiracy theories to so-called patriots. And he's not being challenged by anyone on any of his assertions. One thing that stuck in my head during this live stream was this comment. The Iranian puppet said the following. He said, the main reason for anti-Semitism is Jewish behavior. The host responded with, thank you for making this connection. Later on, one of the hosts, another patriot, mentions how Soleimani did nothing wrong. Soleimani is the guy that Trump just droned, did nothing wrong, and he was just a regular commander, or something like that.
No man alive was more directly responsible for the deaths of more American service members than Qasem Soleimani, the leader of the Quds Force within Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. Soleimani's schemes and his agents killed hundreds of American service members in Iraq and Afghanistan.
Honestly, I wanted to throw up from the stupidity of what I was witnessing. And I'm sorry, but did I miss a memo? When did these self-proclaimed patriots start parroting off far left talking points, collectivist far-left narratives that are identitarian, collectivist conspiracy theories about the Jews. And by the way, which Jews are we talking about here? Are we talking about lefty Jews? Because I know a few. Or are we talking about secular Jews? How about libertarian Jews? Or conservative Jews? Because I know a few of them too. Or how about the religious Jews? What about Ethiopian Jews? Are they part of this grand conspiracy? Are they all the same? This is the lefty collectivist crap, and I'm sorry, but you know absolutely nothing about the Middle East or what goes on there. And your little Jewish conspiracy theories are actually helping the Islamists. The same Islamists that spend so much time, energy, and money making sure that you are labeled a white supremacist. I, and women like myself, grew up with these talking points, by the way. This bullshit was drilled into our heads every single day in school as children. Some of us ex-Muslims even believed it. We believed it up to the point that we got our heads out of the Middle Eastern shitholes that we were in and came to the West. But now here you are, promoting ISIS narrative. Bravo! You know what hurts more than anything? It hurts the most when it comes from people that you thought they were your allies and your friends. And I know what the rebuttal is going to be, by the way. The rebuttal is, oh well, this is free speech and it's my right. Extremist lunatics can go yell at a cloud all they want, in my opinion. Just because we believe in free speech does not mean that we should work to amplify jihadi stupidity. And I'd like to add one more point to Tom Quiggin's podcast. The far left extremists are indeed fostering reciprocal extremism, but they are also fostering reciprocal stupidity. The far right and the far left are beginning to merge and coalesce around anti-Semitism. I want to read you a bit of a long quote from the late Christopher Hitchens. He's one of the many Westerners who tried to warn the West of the Islamist entryism into Western society. Here is the quote. And I'll close by saying this, because anti-Semitism is the godfather of racism and the gateway to tyranny, fascism, and war. It is to be regarded not as the enemy of the Jewish people, I learned, but as the common enemy of humanity and civilization, and has to be fought against very tenaciously for that reason, most especially in its current, most virulent form of Islamic jihad. Daniel Pearl's revolting murderer was educated at London School of Economics. Our Christmas bomber over Detroit was from a neighboring London college, the chair of the Islamic Student Society. Many pogroms against Jewish people are being reported from all over Europe today as I'm talking. And we can only expect this to get worse. And we must make sure our own defenses are not neglected. Our task is to call this filthy thing, this plague, this pest, its right name, to make unceasing resistance to it, knowing all the time that it's probably ultimately ineradicable, and bearing in mind that its hatred towards us is a compliment, and resolving some of the time, at any rate, to do a bit more to deserve it.